introduce yourself, that would be
you.
great. So I'm Deputy Montfortadi, I'm the chair of this panel. Max, just for the record.
Yeah, Deputy Max Andrews, panel member.
Jeff Southern, panel member.
Deputy Karen Wilson.
Thank you. And you are?
I am Nina Morgan, the founder of the Facebook page called CI Cash is King.
Great. Nina, thank you for coming in today. First of all, also thank you for your written submission, which we've read, and I know it contained a lot of useful considerations, so we'll be speaking to those a little bit today as well. Again, just for those listening, this is a review we're doing into the use of cash and how people pay for things in Jersey and that wider context. It might be valuable for us and the public listening if you could briefly outline the background to the Facebook group that you've set up, Jersey Channel Islands Cash is King, and tell us a little bit about that, please.
As far as the reasons, there used to be a lot of mentions about businesses on various Facebook pages. The people couldn't pay with cash, essentially, and in one of them, a gentleman said that would it be nice that if somebody put all these places in one place? So I answered that call, and sadly, at the moment, there is over 50 businesses locally who do not accept cash at all, and it's not a very good place where we have limited supply and access to goods and services as it is.
Okay.
So,
Just for the record, how many members roughly are there in the Facebook group?
I think it's around 4,400, 500, 4,500 maybe. I haven't checked. Yeah.
Thank you. And you've talked about some of the businesses, those 50 businesses that you've identified as a group. Do they fall into any particular categories predominantly, or?
Mostly cafes.
Cafes,
restaurants. There are some public service places like water splash. You should be able to access. Some surgeries even don't, or they specifically request you to have precise amount of cash, so they don't carry any floats at all.
Like doctor surgeries, do you mean?
Yeah. And then I know at least one of the medical cannabis places don't accept cash. So how is a person who's on low income access that if they don't have a bank account is beyond me, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We'll of course talk more about that. So you identify in your submission that you would support any proposition to protect and enshrine the use of cash in Jersey. Is that correct?
I would, yeah.
And the panel's received a number of submissions to that effect, really. Certainly public submissions at least. So there have been many who have identified choice as a key factor.
Yeah.
What are your views on the choice, firstly, of individuals to make a choice of either using cash or not cash, and then on the other hand of businesses to be able to choose how they operate? Where does the balance of...
It's a difficult one, isn't it? My personal view on that is that there is a section of society who simply do not have access to bank accounts or can't operate cards or other electrical devices. People with certain mental health issues, learning difficulties, etc. It's a discrimination, and they are completely shut out from those services and places. So, and we have Disability Discrimination Act in Jersey. So whether there is a choice or not, there's a legislation that should, in theory at least, give us equal access. So whether there's actually room for choice.
So in your head, you're making the act of refusing somebody an act of discrimination?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that something you think would either fall into the discrimination law, or do you think it's something that could be legislated for separately in terms of a requirement?
Either possibly. It might be already covered by the discrimination law legislation as it is.
Yeah.
It all depends how it is viewed,
Yeah.
whether it is counted as as providing access or not. So,
In terms of the balance of harm between if legislation would, or some kind of compulsion or protection about the use of cash were to be enacted, in terms of the balance of harm between not doing that and the harm that would have on individual members of the public versus doing it and the harm that would be or inconvenience to businesses, where do you think the balance lies in that?
personally, I think so. No contest, to be honest. There is a cost for doing a business, whether that cost is paying for extra 10 minutes for somebody doing the float and the banking, and the minimal fee per £100 that banks usually take if they receive cash payments from businesses. The right and access of to have entire society be able to access goods and services, no matter what they are, outweighs the inconvenience. And that's all it is. It's simply an inconvenience.
What do you think the logical conclusion would be if government chose to do nothing?
I think there will be more and more cashless because it is inconvenient for some businesses who have less cash customers, and that would mean that there would be less and less businesses or services that we can access with cash. So it'll be a shrinking, and that would lead into basically having a subcategory of population completely cut out of certain things, and that's not something we should be allowing to happen at all.
Thank you. And this will be my last question for now, but before I pass on to Max, there's clearly there's been limited appetite from the in-person submissions. Sorry, I'll start that again. The people who have come to speak to us as a panel, like you are doing today, all of them have been reluctant to suggest that government should have any form of intervention, even the ones who are perhaps pro-choice in the matter, shall we say, or pro-cash in a loose sense.
Yeah.
Some of them have suggested that there might, though, be certain products and services where they would accept intervention. So if for example, you weren't necessarily able to secure a blanket acceptance of cash across the board, are there particular services and products which you think nobody should be refused?
Any public facing, any public facing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where I would say.
Anything to do with healthcare, or, for example, or
well, government services should be.
Yeah.
Also, and speaking of the government, I believe some departments, if not all, have a limit of £1,000 cash payment. Why is that?
Yeah.
Why is there a limit? Because, for example, applying for citizenship would take you over the threshold. How do you pay that then if you don't have bank accounts?
Yeah.
Simple things like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Max, can I pass over to you?
Indeed, Chair. Thank you for coming in today before the panel. I just want to start off by asking you a question about any of your followers on Facebook. Have they raised concerns about some of the services they have access that the government are delivering, where they have only been able to pay electronically and there has been no option to be making payment via cash?
I must admit straight off that I don't read absolutely every single post in that Facebook group. I do try and keep a track on everything, but it's impossible. What springs to mind is instances of carers taking the person they're caring for say, swimming or sports facility, and not then able to actually attend which is not very good at all. To be honest, I can't think of any other from the top of my head. But there's been a couple of cases of those, and they've been reported in papers as well, I think.
And obviously the panel have raised concerns about consumers going to make payment and then they only realise when they're about to make payment that the business is not accepting cash.
Yeah.
So can you just inform us as a panel about your experiences, having spoken to people who follow your Facebook page, who've told you about their stories in relation to that matter?
Very often the experience seems to be that they go into a shop or whatever business, collect their goods that they want to purchase, go to the till, and there's a tiny little sign that says cashless. And you have all your shopping left in your hands, and they're just going to have to leave it there. So they have wasted, God only knows how much time in that shop, wanting to give their business just to be turned away. So there is no, if there is a sign, it should be highly visible right at the door. You can't miss it, but it's never there. It's by the till, and it's usually rather small.
Yeah.
So.
Obviously, you've mentioned already your preference for all businesses to be accepting cash.
Yes.
However, do you think that potentially one of the recommendations for the panel could be to compel all businesses who have...
Yeah.
Yeah, and the panel notes yesterday in its public hearing with the Minister for Sustainable Development that cash in circulation has decreased in the last few years. So are you concerned that we are heading towards a cashless society? And if so, how soon do you think that potentially could be?
I think at the moment the numbers and figures are being slightly twisted because the pandemic years are counted in those, where everybody was pushing for card payments. Cash is returning. And to be honest, we should, as a government, I think we should be promoting cash use because it's an income stream for the government as well. If it is just down to the powers that be, and I'm not talking about local level government now, I'm talking about the big boys, there is a push towards cashless. However, I don't really see that happening because most of the Europe is very protective of cash. So it's going to be very difficult. There might be few countries like UK and perhaps Jersey that might turn cashless. I would say even within the next 10 years if we don't push back. That's basically it.
And just one last question from me. This seems to be, again, a generational issue, especially for the ageing population. Can you maybe just tell us about some of the concerns that have been raised with you, especially for older citizens who've tried to access services and they have maybe not been able to access, but potentially crucial services to them due to the fact that they have only been able to make card payment?
Yeah, although I would suggest that that is just an issue for the elderly population is a bit of a straw man, because especially now that the finances are getting tough, it's younger and younger people who are having to rely on just the cash in hand system. Access for services, especially now that the banks are closing their branches outside town, is having an impact and is having a massive impact. Not many people like online banking. Not everybody does have a computer or mobile. I have an online banking. I never use it. I don't like it. If I want banking, I go to the shop, and I don't count myself into the elderly population just yet. So yeah, I saw a suggestion from, I can't remember now who it was, of banking hubs creation, and that would be, I think they are in the UK already, and they're run by post offices in the UK. That would be ideal, because I understand that there's less people going into the bank, so that it might not be financially viable for a single bank to have their branches away, but there could quite easily be a hub scattered around the island, which would allow people to go and do their banking when they need.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. I'm going to just ask you some questions now. I just wanted to ask, as a consumer, do you believe the focus of past governmental involvement to have been on business or banks in promoting specific payment methods? Or do you think indeed it is up to the consumer?
Bit of both.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about your views on the difference?
I think as far as a governmental approach, having one type of revenue stream and tracking and for taxing, and I can understand that it's easier if everything was electronic. So you have your tax fraud, you have your money laundering, etc. So it's easier to catch. I understand that and makes sense, but not everything needs to be easy and simple. We've been able to deal with these things for decades and decades without having to go completely simple. From consumer, is it nice and easy and simple to just tap that card? Yes, it is. But do you actually know how much is going out on each of those taps? That I can't keep a track on them. What I have in my pocket, however, I know exactly what's in there and I know how much I'm putting out. So one is convenient to one and other type is convenient to another. And a lot of us are a bit of both.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Some of those making submissions have identified the need for consideration of digital inclusion. Are there any actions you believe could be undertaken to enable islanders to adopt digital payments, should they choose to do so?
Well, as a core, where I live, we don't even have mobile coverage in our house. So that would be the first. Not everybody has a phone or computer or tablet or whatever. Not everybody wants them. You know, they're very expensive little devices, and unless we're going to hand out every single person a free contract and a free machine, whatever that machine happens to be, it's not going to happen.
What about, for example, the £100 payment that was given to each individual during COVID? Do you have any views on those kinds of actions that would actually encourage people to use digital payments at all?
I'm assuming you're referring, there was another witness who suggested some kind of a card system. That would still require a bank account. You know, a lot of these people who can't have a bank account, how do you go by that? And a lot of people don't understand just numbers. They need to be able to see. For some, I think a prepaid card, I suppose so you could call them, might work. For some, it would just not make any sense at all. So,
okay. All right, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay, that's all right, thank you.
Okay, Jeff, can we pass to you?
Yeah, it seems to me that what you're saying is there may well be a cost in going cash, in including cash. The question might be, where does that cost come? Does it fall on the members of the public to make sure that they got the right electronic gizmo, or does the cost fall on the banks who are suggesting that dealing with cash is more expensive for them.
If we were to move totally cashless, and we would have to find a way to ensure that every single individual would have access, then the cost of that kind of action would have to fall on the government and the taxpayer. It cannot be dictated that, say, me as a government body would say to you, you have to go and spend X, Y, and Z to buy this device, or you cannot interact with the rest of the society. And that's not feasible, I don't think, in any, unless you're in China, which I think they are actually doing this, but that's a different kettle of fish completely.
That was news to me. The Chinese were ahead of us on this, although it surprised me perhaps.
All behind.
Or behind, yeah. One of the systems that we do see is the so-called cashback system. So you used to be able to go to pay for your goods and then, would you like some cash, sir? Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Or no. Is that something that's worth exploring?
Cashback? I use cashback all the time, or used to, because where I live, the closest ATM is about a half an hour walk away from me. So I used to get cashback from my shop in order to pay with card and get cashback, so I can spend cash in the other small shops in the village who prefer cash. But that has been taken away now. I don't know why Morrison said 3-4 months ago that it will only take 6 months to return a cashback and never to be seen again currently, so yeah.
When push comes to shove, is it not just a question of who's going to pay for any changes? And have you any thoughts about how or in what form that the services might be paid for?
You're referring to cashbacks?
Or beyond, or wider?
The cash is already in circulation. It does not have an actual cost. Where the cost lies is the third-party activities. There was a very interesting paper I came across. It's not in my submission, so apologies for that. It is titled Cash as Public Infrastructure by Ursula Darlinghouse, PhD, Institute for Money, Technology and Financial Inclusion, on which it's about 90 pages long. I didn't print that out, I'm afraid. However, it is at the end 3-4 pages, three last pages.
We can certainly review that as an additional written submission. Yeah, we'd be interested in that. You can talk to us about that quickly if you like it, giving us a summary. But
yeah,
I mean,
it kind of because it touches what you said, where the cost lies, and it's quite well covered. The cash itself, not only is a revenue for the governments because you order the mint and the printing, and then you sell that cash to the banking institutions and private individuals with a markup. So it would actually make sense to promote more cash use and having more on, just to bolster the public purse, if I may say so. So the cost is already being paid on a cash, and it retains its value no matter what it is always the same value. Where the cost comes is from how long it takes somebody to do the tills, do the cashing up, walk to the bank, drop it in. But those kind of things are usually already budgeted in workforce costs. So whether I don't think they're additional costs at all because they already exist. Whereas using cards usually take a percentage of the sale plus a connection fee, and depending on the bank there might be other. Then there's the rental of the machines, there's the paper. Sometimes some of them still use ink, so there's an ink, and there's no guarantee that you're connected. They go down all the time. I see one or two posts a week on my page saying, oh, the cash machines are down in that place or that place, and it can be the entire, say, Sandpiper system goes down. And so what happens then if we don't have cash as a fallback?
Can I just say, it's very interesting because one of the submissions that we've had is that cash actually costs more. So we've never heard it explained in that way before. What would you argue would then be the variable cost associated with using cash as the method of payment?
As a variable cost?
Yes, because what you've talked about is fixed costs in the sense that it's all contained in the workforce and whatever. So do you see any variable cost to using cash at all?
The only variable cost as using cash is the bank fees, which vary per £100 from bank to bank for business to deposits. For example, I think Barclays is 0.6% or free, depending on the size of your business. If you're small or medium, it's free. Whereas some of the other ones go well over 1% fee. So as far as that, that's the only variable.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Thanks for that. So I suppose the point is that there are fees, usually whether it's business handling cash and paying in cash or paying for the card services.
And if you're completely honest with all the additional fees with the card use, I would not be surprised if they're pretty even.
So you do talk about this in your submission. So you say about the fees that banks charge, and you argue for them either being limited or abolished. Is that right?
I think they should be.
I don't want to misquote you.
They should be equal.
Yeah, I think you said any fees related must be like what electronic transaction carry and no more.
Yeah,
So
in
you
relation to, say, Liberty bus,
Okay, thank you.
which is 50p more if you use cash versus card payment. That's not right.
No, and you wouldn't want to see that expanded so that people say you can use cash but you're going to pay more for it.
No, I would not. Sorry.
Do you think we should make a recommendation on that basis that it would be discriminatory to charge cash users more?
I think so, yes, but in the same way, it should not cost more to use a card machine. So, level playing field.
And those are just absorbed as business usual business expenses.
Everybody, any business person knows there's a cost for making business.
Can I ask you though about when it comes to banking charges? So, for example, at the moment, private individuals don't pay in cash into their bank accounts.
No, you don't.
Do you think that there's a responsibility for banks to also review and question whether they apply those charges to businesses generally, given the fact that maybe that's not how banks traditionally make their money?
Banks traditionally make their money by lending our money to other people with that hefty markup. And we don't get to see any of that. You know, a current account holder does not have any interest. So I think their bottom lines could handle it, quite honestly. Whether they will or do that, that's a different matter.
Do you think there's a risk that if cash were to go out of circulation, so if tomorrow we didn't use cash anymore, would banks simply try and pass fees on to card users in another way? Is there a risk we could see card fees go up?
I would suggest so, because even, a penny in the sea will, a drop of penny, it grows into a great big puddle. So I don't know what the figure is for the bankers, how much they actually make from those fees from businesses to depositing cash. But they would have to cover that income from somewhere else, and that would be then most logically be slapped on card use.
Do you differentiate between the costs of a business using cash versus card in terms of where that money that gets siphoned off goes? So when you tap your card and let's say 1.5% goes to a card company, that money, where will that end up relative to the money that the costs of using cash? Do you have any thoughts?
I don't know precisely where they go. I know whoever's supplying the machine will take a cut. Connection to the bank, there is a fee depending on cards. Different cards have different costs related, so it's a bit complicated. Whereas cash, I put £100 as a business into a bank and I pay 0.6% fee for that. Okay. Very simple. Yeah. There is no variation and guessing how much my cost for the month is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Right, thank you. Well, I think you're doing very well, by the way, to get through all these questions. The panel's been, I think we've answered the question about discounts actually and surcharges. So we talked about Liberty Bus as one example.
Yeah.
There are those who have expressed concerns that banks are gaining too much power over individuals, and I think you've mentioned that in your submission. Are there any additional points that you'd like to add or explanation around that?
I touched it. I don't think I went into great detail on it on the submission.
Well, certainly, some people have made those kind of comments.
Yeah. If you go in a bank and want to withdraw money, very often the bank will ask you, what do you want to use this for? To me, and for many, it's none of their business. It is my assets. You are holding them for me. I have a right for those assets and pull them out whenever I like, without having to explain where am I going to use them.
And or where you got that money from.
Do you think that's why they're doing it, or do you think there's a different reason?
I
presume. Do you think that's why they're doing it, or do you think there's a different reason?
I presume that's the reason, but whether they should be treating private individual as a default criminal is right or wrong. I think I know where I'm thinking.
Okay, thank you.
As far as online banking goes, I'd like to touch on this. As an example, you want to use your online banking and you want to pay somebody, say you want to buy a motorbike or whatever, and you haven't done business with them before. And it could be a legitimate business that flags up green on the online portal, and you put say £2,000 payment. You have to then press several times. Are you really sure you want to do this? Yes. Are you really sure you want to do this? Yes. Can you put your PIN entry numbers in? Yes. 2 days later, the person you wanted to send it to says nothing's arrived. So you spend 2 hours on the phone. Why didn't my money not go? Oh, we didn't think you should. It was a bit dodgy. I said, hang on a second. I just gone through several confirmations that I wanted to do this, and now the person I want to buy this thing from thinks that I'm now good to it. And then you have to redo the whole thing, but this time the bank has pre-approved your transaction. So the bank is trying to limit how to use your money. I understand that there is a level of protection, but I think they're a little bit overzealous on that. Yeah. Whether there is a balance to be found or not, I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Right. So I think those are my questions for now. Who wants to ask question 8?
Okay, I think Max was that.
Yeah, Max, are you all right?
Was that you?
I don't know if you've got sight of the questions, have you, Max?
Yes. I think we've already touched on question 8 a bit before, but I know several stakeholders have raised concerns about money laundering, for instance, and fraud as well. And I just wanted to have your views on cash and electronic payments in relation to both money laundering and fraud.
Against fraud, I would suggest that cash is much safer. You can't be scammed online with it if you don't have any online activity and access. You can't be scammed, and I presume this is just, I have no proof whatsoever, but I would imagine that online scams have actually gone through the roof, because there are so many of them around, and you see also. Compared to when cash was more in use, there would have been less. You would actually have to be taken to a bank by the scammer and then try and withdraw that money, where the cashier would then be gatekeeping you there.
In response to that, we've been, some people have said that is balanced by cash in hand procedure issues. So you pay your cleaner whatever it is per week, and that money is not necessarily declared as income. So that the balance between computer fraud and cash in hand, money quietly going into the grey or the black economy. Is that balanced? I don't know if you found any information on that.
I guess it depends how big the, you call it grey economy, isn't it?
Yeah, grey economy and formal economy.
Yeah.
There's also the illegal
how big
economy.
it actually is, and whether it has even much of an impact on tax takes or not. Yes, it does happen, but we have legislations, we have the powers to deal with it. So there would be no extra that needs to be done as well. And it's so easy because you're just quickly tapping, you are not actually sitting down with a person, and where you can trust your gut instinct on and do a little bit of a hearing out, this doesn't really sound right. Whereas on the online environment, it's done like that.
Could I just...
So Max, do you want to finish your line of questioning, then we'll bring Karen in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there is any pressure from law enforcement authorities who would probably prefer electronic transactions because it's probably more traceable compared to, say, cash transactions that is a lot more difficult to monitor and have oversight of?
Yes, I'm sure they would prefer it. Why does everything needs to be monitored is my question.
So I didn't quite hear that, sorry.
Why does everything need to be monitored is my question.
So why does everything need to be monitored?
Needs to be monitored.
Yeah.
Well, I think from, say, a law enforcement perspective,
Yes.
I'm asking, would there be more pressure to go cashless in that respect because it's easier for them to do their job compared to, say, if there are cash transactions?
Yeah. I think they would like it because it would make their life a lot easier. However, as from a criminal point of view, money laundering, obtaining assets, it reminds me of, I think it was on the 70s in the UK when the tax rates went through the roof. People started paying with pieces of art. If you are a criminal, you will find a way around it. Whether there's cash, they just use something else as a currency, so to speak.
Thanks for that, Max. We'll bring Karen in.
Thank you. We may well have sort of passed them over, but I just wanted to go back to your points around discrimination and this notion of inconvenience. And what is it that makes you draw those conclusions about discrimination and inconvenience? What are the key things that we need to take away from what you're telling us today that we might want to consider?
For me, as I am a carer of a 100% disabled person, I expect the society to be open for all its population, as far as governmental services, businesses, goods. And if you are being denied because of disability, that you can't go to a cafe, you can't go to the airport or the ports of Jersey, go and have a cup of coffee there, if you don't have a card. They do not take cash, and these are used traditionally ports and places of where tourists dump their cash, extra coins and all that gone. It's a bit weird. But going back to discrimination is, I can't take my partner to best part of 50 places because we prefer using cash. And that includes swimming pools. There's some heritage sites, to other tourist conclusions, restaurants. So yeah, it is discrimination, because I would expect that all these things were open for everybody. I know businesses choose their customers all the time, but they cannot do that based on disabilities. And that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The only other area I just wanted to come back to was in this scenario where you go into a store and you're able to get cash back. In terms of the scale of the size of the operation, because there is one argument that it's a very costly thing to manage cash as part of a transaction for a business. What would you say about smaller businesses? Because I'm presuming that you're talking about smaller corner shops that offer that when the banks are actually saying, well, actually, to manage that kind of a transaction, it's quite costly.
Yeah, I was in catering for just about 20 years in a management level. I've been doing cash ups that entire and doing the books and the accounts related. Never ever has it taken me more than 10-15 minutes. Is that really too much of a cost, is my question.
So it's not necessarily about the cash holding, it's about the management of that cash when it's actually being transacted.
It comes
from
in,
a customer.
It comes in, and the end of the day, the cash up is done, end of the day, and then it either usually goes into a great big heavy safe and then gets removed there from the following day, or once or twice a week, and then walked into the nearest bank and plopped in.
Do you think there's an element at which there's a critical mass? So some businesses have told us the fact that is because society is moving, whether it's being compelled or not, it's another matter, but so little cash is being used that in the past they might have used the cash to recirculate. So you're taking cash, but you're paying people back in cash, whereas people are tapping now, so there's no change to be given, for example.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts around whether we've passed the critical point of...
I don't think so, because the tide has been turning already. Like I said, we have been influenced by the pandemic years where everybody was avoiding cash. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people were. And they were, well, if they had a card was used because it was seen more hygienic. But that's long gone now. And in the UK, cash has been gone up, the use. I think we're reaching about a 30% point now in the UK. You will see the same in here. There's a lot of businesses in my page that say that most of their intake is in cash, and it's getting more and more and more. But I would imagine that's also because people are more aware. We have television programs now, news reports on the papers. There's been all these issues about cash. So it'll be bouncing back. I don't see it becoming the major currency used, but it'll return back to its about 1/3 of the transactions.
Let's push it to the extreme. I like that, that's fun. The government says to banks,
Yeah.
you can operate as a bank under these conditions, some of which are a cost to you. What should one of those conditions be that you maintain a system for cash use? Would you put it in the law?
Would I put it in a law? I would put it in as a recommendation by the Jersey Financial. I don't want to advertise a specific bank, but Barclays' system of small to medium, no transaction fee for cash deposits, and then if you're a bigger business, it's still fairly low. Because let's face it, it's mainly machines that do the counting nowadays in the banks, not really the humans. So I think so. I would cap that. I would request a capping of those costs. So all banks, because some banks are more pushing towards not having cash at all than others. Some banks, I don't know if there's been more cases, but I was told of a person who wanted to open a cafe in St. Helier, and they couldn't get a bank account because they wanted to operate with cash. Their bank turned them down. Right. You can't have a business account, so no cafe, apparently. Whereas the one, there's probably more cases. So.
I've got a couple of areas of questioning which I think we are coming towards a natural end anyway, and towards 3:30, which is what we'd allocated. But there's this concept of legal tender that keeps coming back in submissions. Can you talk to us about what you understand by the idea of legal tender? I'll caveat that by saying it came up during the debate recently on sports centres, where the Attorney General, I think it was, said that there's no definition in law about legal tender. But there is a kind of general wider understanding or belief in cash being legal tender. What do you have to say about that?
What is a legal tender? Yes. I know a legal tender is not a piece of plastic with a chip in it. A legal tender is where a note or a coin has a set value, and it holds its set value, and it can be used as a transaction method.
I guess what I'm getting at is that if you've got a 5 or a 10 or even a £20 note, it's fine to say that that £20 note is worth £20, but if nobody is accepting that anymore, that renders the idea of legal tender a bit problematic.
It would disappear.
Yeah.
Because we would be left with just digital numbers that can be wiped off the face of the planet if somebody wants to, just on a flick.
Yeah. So just to, I think your submission makes this clear, but just for us, if we will have to consider a recommendation amongst a number of them potentially around enshrining the use of cash or not, which we won't take lightly because it would be an imposition on businesses on the one hand, but we need to consider whether that's the right way to go. Is that something you would want the panel to do and want government to do?
Yeah, I would. And so would the other 4,000 plus people, if not more.
And the next question, I suppose, is getting slightly more into the realms of philosophy, but I think it's something which has come out during our review, is the impact that moving entirely cashless might have on our being human. So a lot of people feel that it's not just about the ability to use cash, but it's about the human interaction that goes with cash. Perhaps the length of time it takes, the conversations that are had when you do transact in cash. Is there an element of truth in that, do you think?
From personal experience, yeah, there is. I go to a shop and I just tap away and I say hi, tap, buy. Out of the door, I interact with cash. There's usually several sentences swapped between two people. So yeah, there is definitely a social component of using cash. And a lot of people go to bank to have a chat with the cashier, but also with the other people who are waiting to be seen. So it is a social interaction tool or vehicle, whichever you want to think about it. So yeah, that would definitely go, and that would probably have rather large impact. Because if you think about it, the pandemic years when we were 6 feet away and we tapped from the distance, barely anybody spoke with anybody, even in the waiting in the queues, because somebody was 6 feet behind, and it was just silent in the shops. That's what we're looking at, and
I think what I'm hearing is that you're describing a very different kind of customer service, which is that traditionally customer service was about building a relationship on a face-to-face.
to put the coins in, but not that much. But there's nobody to talk to. It's a machine. You just out you go. How many jobs are lost as well?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, Max? No? Do you have any questions for us, Nina? Or any other points?
I don't know. It's such a huge topic.
Yeah. We're mindful of that. I mean, as I've suggested, that it starts off being about cash, but it also becomes about other areas which are relevant.
Privacy, choice, security, budgeting, traditions. It's an entire world.
Well, listen, we appreciate you coming in, especially because I know that you're just one member of the online group, and that you are representing them in it, and it's
no pressure.
Yeah, exactly. But I know that they'll probably be rooting for you, and some of them will have been watching. So, thanks again for both your submission and your time today.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I think we can go offline.